The control tower at Holloman Air Force Base erupted in chaos as Lieutenant Commander Maya Roberts touched down on the forbidden runway, her experimental F-35E Phoenix screaming beneath her. The sleek jet's engines howled in defiance of the frantic. Radio calls demanding she abort her landing. Her fingers trembled against the throttle, not from fear but from the weight of what she'd just done. I crossed 3 international borders in a stolen prototype fighter jet, she thought. Instead of terror, all she felt was grim determination as the satellite phone in her flight suit buzzed with the desperate message that had shattered her career 12 hours ago. Maya, they've taken the ambassador. They need your help. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The radio crackled angrily. Unidentified aircraft, you are trespassing unrestricted military airspace. Identify yourself immediately. Maya's finger hovered over the transmit button. Once she responded, there would be no going back. The stolen jet's transponder was already broadcasting her aircraft's identity to every military radar system within 500 miles. They knew exactly who had taken their plane. Holloman Tower, this is Lieutenant Commander Maya Roberts, service number 4,785,362. I have an emergency situation, she stated firmly. A pause then. Commander Roberts, you are ordered to return to the hangar immediately. You are flying a restricted aircraft. Negative, Holloman. I have a code red situation involving high-value hostages. Transmitting coordinates now. She punched the location into the aircraft's computer, a remote compound in the mountains of northern Mexico where the American ambassador was being held by a terrorist cell with ties to military intelligence. The group had given government officials exactly 8 hours to deliver classified weapons technology that could destabilize entire regions. Technology that Maya had helped develop before she'd walked away from it all. The radio exploded with chatter as multiple voices began coordinating her interception. She recognized some of the call signs, former squadron mates who would be genuinely conflicted about bringing her down. But orders were orders, and she was now officially a rogue. Pilot commanding one of America's most advanced prototype fighter aircraft. Maya pushed the throttle forward, feeling the familiar embrace of G-forces. As the F-35E accelerated, the compound was still 35 minutes away, and she could already see contrails forming on the horizon behind her, her former colleagues, scrambling to stop her before she could reach her destination. She thought of Ambassador Williams' family, of the international crisis that would erupt if he died in captivity, of the choice that had brought her to this moment. Sometimes doing the right thing meant making the most complicated decision of your life. Maya had been testing flight simulators at the private aerospace company she worked for in San Diego when her world collapsed around her. The call came at 6:32 p.m. on a Thursday that had been unremarkable in every way. She'd been thinking about picking up Thai food on her way home when her secure phone rang. Maya, the voice of her former commanding officer, Admiral Jackson, was tense with urgency. "Sir, I'm not in the service anymore, remember?" she replied, confused by the unexpected call. "That's about to change. Ambassador Williams has been kidnapped in Mexico. The group responsible is demanding Project Firestorm data." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Project Firestorm had been buried so deep in classified files that even she had trouble believing it had ever existed. The experimental weapons guidance system she'd helped develop 7 years ago was supposed to have been decommissioned. Its research locked away forever. "That's impossible," she said. Firestorm was terminated. "Apparently not completely," Jackson replied grimly. "Someone kept the core algorithms. And now they want the targeting matrices you designed." Maya closed her eyes, already knowing where this was heading. "Why call me? I'm a civilian now." "Because you're the only one who can fly the Phoenix. It's the only aircraft with the speed and stealth capabilities to reach the compound before they execute the ambassador. Every minute counts, and we've already lost 3 hours to bureaucratic red tape. By the time we get official authorization for a military strike, it'll be too late. Maya's mind was already shifting into mission planning mode, the mental discipline that had kept her alive through 4 combat deployments. What's the plan, sir? There isn't one. Officially, this conversation never happened. Officially, I never told you that the Phoenix prototype is sitting on the tarmac at Holloman with a full tank and live weapon systems for tomorrow's test flight. Maya understood immediately. And officially, no one will know how I got access to a restricted base and a classified aircraft. Plausible deniability works both ways, Commander. If you're caught, you're on your own. No one will back you up. Best case scenario, you spend the next 30 years in federal prison. And worst case, you don't want to know. Maya had spent the next 3 hours planning, using skills she'd thought she'd never need again in civilian life. She pulled up satellite imagery, analyzed weather patterns and approach vectors, and calculated fuel requirements for a mission that had 0 chance of official approval. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Then she'd driven to Holloman Air Force Base. Getting onto the base had been the first major obstacle. Her military ID had expired years ago, and the security was tight at the home of the 49th Wing. But Maya had something even more valuable than credentials. She had inside knowledge. The Phoenix project had been her baby before she'd walked away from military service. She knew every member of the engineering team, every security protocol, and most importantly, every weakness in the base's perimeter defenses. There was a maintenance access road on the southwest corner that was used by civilian contractors. The gate was guarded, but the fence beside it had been damaged 3 months ago, according to her contacts. The repair had been scheduled, but delayed due to budget constraints. Maya had parked her car 2 miles from the base and approached on foot, dressed in standard flight suit and carrying forged contractor credentials. The hole in the fence was exactly where her information had indicated, just large enough for a person to slip through if they knew where to look. Once inside, she moved with confidence. In high-security environments, acting like you belonged was half the battle. She walked briskly toward Hangar 7, nodding at the occasional passing airman who paid her little attention. It was 2 a.m., and the graveyard shift was focused on their own responsibilities. The Phoenix sat in the hangar like a predator at rest, its sleek lines and advanced stealth features making it look more alien than aircraft. Maya's heart raced as she approached the machine she had helped design. The F-35E Phoenix was a modified version of the Lightning II, but with significant upgrades to its propulsion system, avionics, and weapons capabilities. Only 3 prototypes existed, and this was the only one currently flight-ready. Maya performed her pre-flight inspection with methodical precision, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. The familiar ritual was almost meditative, checking control surfaces, verifying fuel levels, testing communications equipment. For just a few minutes, she could pretend this was simply another test flight. The engine startup sequence brought back a flood of memories. The high-pitched whine of the turbofan spooling up, the subtle vibration through the airframe, the heads-up display flickering to life with its constellation of information. This was her element, the place where she'd always felt most alive. But as she taxied toward the runway, reality crashed back down. She was stealing the most advanced fighter jet in the American arsenal to conduct an unauthorized rescue mission across international borders. In the best-case scenario, she'd spend decades in federal prison. In the worst case, she'd be shot down by her own Air Force long before she reached the ambassador. The takeoff had been flawless, muscle memory guiding. her through the acceleration and rotation as the Phoenix clawed its way into the pre-dawn darkness. Only when she'd reached cruising altitude did she allow herself to think about what came next. Now racing toward the compound with multiple interceptor aircraft closing in behind her, Maya finally understood why her father, a career Navy pilot, had always said that the hardest decisions were the ones that forced you to choose between duty and conscience. She was about to find out if one woman's courage could overcome impossible odds. The first warning came as Maya crossed into Mexican airspace. Her radar warning receiver began chirping insistently, indicating that she was being painted by multiple tracking systems. Behind her, two F-22 Raptors had closed to within 30 miles, sleek predators that could end her mission with a single missile shot. "Commander Roberts, this is Colonel Richard Hayes, 49th Fighter Wing." The voice that crackled through her headset carried the weight of command authority. "You will turn to heading 010 and return to Holloman immediately. This is not a request." Maya recognized the voice. Rich Hayes had been her flight instructor during her early career, a by-the-book officer who tried unsuccessfully to convince her to stay in the service rather than resign her commission over ethical concerns about Project Firestorm. He was also a father who would understand what was at stake. "Colonel, this is an emergency situation involving the kidnapping of Ambassador Williams," she transmitted. "Back. I'm requesting permission to proceed to the target coordinates I've already uploaded." "Permission denied, Commander. You've stolen a prototype aircraft and violated international airspace. The only way this ends well for you is if you follow orders and return to base." Maya checked her navigation display. 12 minutes to the compound. The F-22s were closing fast, but she still had a slim tactical advantage: the Phoenix's smaller radar cross-section and her intimate knowledge of the terrain from countless border patrol missions. "Rich," she said, dropping the formality and hoping to reach the man beneath the rank. "They have Ambassador Williams. The people who took him claimed to have ties to intelligence agencies, but they're operating outside official channels. If I turn back now, he dies, and we risk an international incident that could destabilize the entire region." The radio stayed silent for nearly 30 seconds. Maya used the time to drop altitude, skimming just above the rugged mountains where radar shadows might provide some concealment. The terrain below was treacherous and unforgiving, a maze of canyons and peaks that had claimed more than one aircraft over the years. "Maya," Colonel Hayes' voice had softened slightly, "even if everything you're saying is true, this isn't the way. Come back and we'll work through proper channels. State Department, DOD, whatever it takes. There's no time. They gave the government 8 hours. That was 5 hours ago." She banked hard left, following a narrow valley that she remembered from a training exercise years earlier. The Phoenix's wingtips cleared the rocky walls by less than 50 feet on either side. Behind her, the F-22s had to climb higher to maintain safe separation from the terrain, buying her precious minutes. Her secure satellite phone buzzed. Maya fumbled for the device with one hand while maintaining control with the other, nearly sending the fighter into a granite cliff face before she managed to stabilize. "Admiral Jackson? Please tell me you have good news." "Maya, abort the mission. It's a trap." Ice flooded Maya's veins. "What do you mean?" "I've been digging since we spoke. This isn't about ransom or Firestorm. The group holding the ambassador is a front for something bigger. They're using this situation to flesh you out." "Me? Why?" "Because you're the only one who knows the truth about what Firestorm can really do. With you eliminated, there's no one left who understands the system's full capabilities. They need you discredited or dead before they can move forward with their plans." Maya's mind raced. "Who's behind this?" "We traced funding to Gentech Industries, the defense contractor that was supposed to destroy all the Firestorm research. Data. They kept copies, but they can't implement the final targeting algorithms without your access codes. Maya pulled up her navigation system, double-checking the coordinates of the compound. If this was a trap, she needed to be even more careful in her approach. Where's the ambassador now? Still at the compound, we think. Our satellite imagery shows significant activity there. But Maya, you're flying into a kill zone. They have surface-to-air missiles, electronic warfare systems, everything. This isn't some third-world operation. This is cutting-edge military technology. Then it's a good thing I helped design countermeasures for exactly these kinds of systems, Maya replied. During her time with the 49th Wing, she'd been part of the team that developed defenses against next-generation air defense systems. She knew their capabilities, their limitations, and most importantly, their weaknesses. The F-22s were closing again, having navigated around the mountain range. Maya could see their contrails on her scope, 2 deadly arrows aimed directly at her heart. But she also noticed something else, additional aircraft rising from bases in the southwestern United States. The military was mobilizing serious resources to stop her, which meant someone with serious influence wanted her silenced. "Admiral, I need you to do something for me," Maya said, pulling the Phoenix into a steep climb that would momentarily silhouette her against the morning sky, but also give her a clearer picture of the tactical situation. Anything within reason. Contact Director Sophia Chun at the Pentagon's Oversight Committee. Tell her everything about Gentek and Firestorm. If this goes sideways, someone needs to know the truth. Consider it done. And Maya, good hunting. Maya ended the call and switched her radio to the emergency frequency. What she was about to do would either save the ambassador's life or get them both killed, but she was out of alternatives. "Hayes, listen carefully. I'm declaring a Priority 1 national security alert. I have evidence that Gentek Industries is behind the ambassador's kidnapping and is attempting to weaponize Project Firestorm technology for sale to foreign entities." The response was immediate. "Maya, you're in no position to declare anything. You're flying a stolen aircraft and making increasingly desperate claims. Then explain why Gentek knew exactly when the Phoenix would be flight ready. Explain why. They have surface-to-air missiles positioned around there. Compound that match exactly the specifications of systems we designed to test Firestorm against. Explain why they waited until I was the only pilot qualified to fly this mission before making their move." The silence that followed told Maya everything she needed to know. Someone was listening who understood the implications of what she'd just said. She used that moment of uncertainty to execute a maneuver that would have been impossible in any aircraft other than the Phoenix. Rolling inverted, she pulled into a negative G-dive that sent her plummeting toward the desert floor at a nearly vertical angle. At the last possible second, she rolled upright and pulled out of the dive, leveling off barely 100 feet above the ground. The F-22s, caught off guard by the sudden maneuver, overshot her position by miles. Maya was now flying nap of the earth through a landscape she knew intimately, using every ridge and valley to mask her radar signature. Her threat warning system was going crazy now, indicating multiple missile locks from ground-based systems. The compound was defending itself, which meant she was heading in the right direction. But it also meant that the easy part of her mission was over. Maya armed her aircraft's electronic warfare systems and selected her most advanced air-to-ground missiles. If Gentek wanted a fight, she'd give them one they'd never forget. Ambassador Williams was somewhere in that heavily defended facility ahead, and Maya would move heaven and earth to bring him home safely. The desert floor rushed past in a blur of sand and scrub brush as she prepared for the most dangerous aerial assault of her career. Behind her, the entire United States Air Force was mobilizing to stop her. Ahead, a private army waited with enough firepower to down a squadron of fighters. In between was just one woman in one stolen plane, flying on nothing but instinct and determination. The odds couldn't have been worse. Maya smiled grimly and pushed her throttle to military power. She'd beaten worse odds before. Admiral Jackson's voice crackled through the satellite phone one more time. "Maya, I've been analyzing the compound schematics. There's something you need to know about Gentek. They're not just after the Firestorm technology. They're planning to demonstrate its capabilities to potential buyers using the ambassador as leverage. This isn't just a kidnapping. It's a sales pitch that could compromise national security for decades." The full scope of the conspiracy finally became clear. This wasn't about money or even military technology. It was about power on a scale that would reshape global politics for generations. Maya had thought she was conducting a rescue mission. Instead, she'd stumbled into the middle of the largest intelligence breach in American history. And the only thing standing between success and catastrophe was a fighter pilot who'd been out of the game for 3 years, flying a stolen plane against impossible odds. The compound appeared on the horizon, bristling with defensive systems, and crawling with personnel who had orders to shoot her down on sight. Maya took a deep breath and prepared to find out what she was really made of. The surface-to-air missile appeared on Maya's threat display like a digital angel of death. Fast-moving blip rising from the Gentek compound with her aircraft's name written on it in high explosives. Missile launch, bearing 047. Her aircraft's warning system announced in its maddeningly calm synthetic voice. Time to impact 45 seconds. Maya's hands moved with practiced precision, deploying chaff and flares while throwing the Phoenix into a violent evasive maneuver that would have killed most pilots. The G-forces slammed her deep into her ejection seat as she pulled a 9G turn that made her vision tunnel and her bones ache. The first missile streaked past her left wingtip, its proximity fuse triggered by the chaff cloud she'd deployed. The explosion was close enough to rock her aircraft and spiderweb her canopy, but the Phoenix held together. 2 more launches. Then 3. Maya was now fighting for her life against a coordinated missile defense system that represented millions of dollars of cutting-edge technology. Each missile was smarter than the last, learning from her previous evasive maneuvers and adapting its attack profile accordingly. "This is insane," she muttered, rolling inverted and diving toward a cluster of radio towers that would mask her radar signature. "Admiral, please tell me you have some good news." The Admiral's voice was tight with tension. "I've been monitoring their communications, Maya. They're not trying to capture you anymore. Orders came down from someone very high up. You're to be eliminated at all costs." A 4th missile exploded so close that shrapnel peppered her aircraft's belly. Warning. Lights illuminated across her instrument panel like a malevolent Christmas display. Hydraulic pressure dropping. Engine temperature rising. Fuel leak detected. The Phoenix was dying around her, and she was still 5 miles from the compound. "Admiral, I need an alternate approach route, something they won't expect." "There isn't one. The compound is built into a mountain face with overlapping defensive systems covering every possible angle of attack. Maya, you need to eject now, before the aircraft breaks apart." Maya's hand moved instinctively toward the ejection handle, then stopped. Through her damaged canopy, she could see the Gentek facility spread across the valley below, a complex of buildings and hangars that looked more like a military base than a corporate research center. Somewhere in those buildings, Ambassador Williams was waiting for rescue. If Maya ejected now, the ambassador would die. The evidence of Gentek's treason would disappear. The people responsible would walk away clean, probably with government contracts worth billions of dollars. "Negative on the ejection," Maya said grimly. "I'm taking this bird all the way in." "Maya, don't be stupid. You can't save the ambassador if you're dead. I can't save him from prison either." Maya selected her remaining air-to-ground missiles and began targeting the facility's defensive systems. If she was going down, she'd take as many of their weapons with her as possible. Maybe it would create enough chaos for a follow-up rescue mission to have a chance. The first GM-158J ASSM missile streaked away from her aircraft, guided by the Phoenix's targeting system toward a radar installation on the facility's eastern perimeter. The explosion was spectacular, sending a mushroom cloud of debris and smoke hundreds of feet into the air. Two more missiles followed in quick succession, targeting communication arrays and missile launchers. Maya's attack was precise and devastating, the result of years of training and combat experience that Gentek's mercenaries couldn't match. But her aircraft was failing faster than she could neutralize threats. The engine temperature had crossed the red line, and she could smell smoke. In the cockpit, the hydraulic failure had compromised her flight controls, making the Phoenix increasingly difficult to fly. Her fuel was leaking from multiple punctures, leaving a trail of vapor that made her as visible as a comet. "Maya, I'm reading multiple. Aircraft inbound to your position." Admiral Jackson's voice was filled with urgency. "Military and civilian. Someone's coordinating a major response." Through her cracked canopy, Maya could see contrails approaching from multiple directions. The cavalry was coming, but it was too late to help her and too early to save the ambassador. Then her radio crackled with an unexpected voice. "Commander Roberts, this is General Catherine Winters, Joint Special Operations Command. We've been monitoring your situation." Maya's heart leaped. General Winters had been her mentor during her early years of service. The officer who'd recognized Maya's potential when she was just a rookie pilot struggling to fit into a male-dominated field. If anyone would understand what she was facing, it would be her. "General, I have a situation involving the abduction of, we know about Gentek, Maya. The President's National Security Advisor has been investigating them for months. Your information just gave us the evidence we needed for a full-scale operation." Relief flooded through Maya's system, immediately followed by crushing realization. "Ma'am, they have Ambassador Williams. If you move against the facility now, already handled. Navy SEAL Team 6 is standing by, but we need you to create a distraction while they move in. Can you keep their attention for another 10 minutes? Maya looked at her instrument panel. Half the warning lights were now red, and the engine was making sounds that would have terrified a lesser pilot. The Phoenix had maybe 5 minutes of flight time left, and that was optimistic. "I can give you 5, maybe 6 minutes, she said. "After that, I'm either on the ground or in pieces." "Copy that, Maya. What you've done today, exposing this conspiracy, gathering intelligence under fire, it's the kind of heroism they give. Medals for... I don't want a medal, General. I want to bring the ambassador home safely. You will. Winters out." Maya banked toward the facility's main complex, where the largest concentration of defensive systems remained operational. She had 5 minutes to be the most dangerous pilot in the sky, drawing fire and attention while the real heroes moved in on foot. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd stolen a fighter jet to conduct a solo rescue mission, only to discover that her real contribution would be as a decoy. But if it brought Ambassador Williams home safely and exposed Gentek's treason, Maya would gladly play the part. She armed her remaining weapons and dove toward the Gentek facility like an avenging angel, her damaged aircraft trailing smoke and determination in equal measure. 5 minutes to save a life. 5 minutes to expose a conspiracy. 5 minutes to prove that sometimes the most ordinary people were capable of the most extraordinary things. The mountain face rushed up to meet her as she began her final attack. Run! Maya's final attack run was poetry written in smoke and fire. With her Phoenix disintegrating around her and enemy missiles converging from multiple directions, she threaded the needle between 2 radar installations and launched her last JASSM at the facility's main communications tower. The explosion lit up the morning sky like a second sunrise, sending twisted metal and electronics cascading down the mountainside. Target destroyed, she reported to General Winters, fighting to keep her voice steady as another warning light joined the symphony of alarms in her cockpit. Main communications are down. Copy that, Phoenix. SEAL team reports they're inside the perimeter. The ambassador is in Building 7, northwest corner of the complex. Maya could see Building 7 through her spider-webbed canopy, a nondescript, concrete structure that looked more like a warehouse than a high-tech research facility. But between her current position and that building lay a gauntlet of defensive systems that were now focused entirely on destroying her aircraft. The Phoenix's engine finally gave up the fight with a mechanical scream that Maya felt in her bones. The massive turbofan that had powered her through countless test flights and this final, desperate mission ceased completely, leaving her flying. A $350 million glider with the aerodynamic properties of a brick. Engine failure, she reported, already calculating glide ratios and emergency landing options. I'm going down. Maya, eject, General Winters commanded. You've done enough. But ejecting would send her drifting slowly toward the ground. On a parachute, completely vulnerable to enemy fire. Worse, it would leave the damaged Phoenix to crash wherever physics and chance dictated, possibly into Building 7 itself. Instead, Maya did something that would either be remembered as brilliantly tactical or criminally insane. She aimed her dying aircraft directly at the facility's main defensive control center. "This is for everyone you've betrayed," she whispered, and dove toward the mountainside complex at 300 miles per hour. The control center was a hardened bunker built into the mountain face. Its concrete walls were designed to withstand everything short of a direct nuclear strike. It was also the nerve center for Gentek's entire defensive network. Take it out, and their remaining weapons would be firing blind. Maya held the Phoenix in its death dive until the last possible second, then yanked the ejection handle with barely 500 feet of altitude remaining. The ejection sequence felt like being shot from a cannon. The canopy blew away in a shower of plexiglass fragments, immediately followed by Maya's ejection seat rocketing clear of the doomed aircraft. Below her, the Phoenix continued its kamikaze run toward the control bunker. Maya had perhaps 3 seconds to appreciate the view before her parachute deployed, jerking her upright with bone-jarring force. The world spun around her as she drifted toward the rocky mountainside, trying to steer her chute away from the worst of the terrain while simultaneously watching her aircraft complete its final mission. The Phoenix hit the control bunker with the force of a small meteorite. $350 million of cutting-edge fighter aircraft, plus whatever fuel remained in its tanks, converted into pure kinetic energy in a fraction of a second. The explosion was visible from space and audible from 3 counties away. When the smoke cleared, the defensive control center had simply ceased to exist. Maya touched down hard on a narrow ledge of granite, her parachute immediately caught by the mountain wind and threatening to drag her over the edge. She hit the quick-release mechanisms and rolled away from the cliff face, coming to rest against a boulder with her ears ringing and her body feeling like it had been used as a punching bag. But she was alive. And more importantly, she was only about half a mile from Building 7. Her satellite phone had somehow survived the ejection. Admiral Jackson's voice was frantic. "Maya, are you there?" "We saw the explosion." Maya gasped that she was on the ground, testing her limbs for serious damage. Everything hurt, but everything still worked. She asked about the status on the SEAL team. The response came that they were inside Building 7 now, but there was a problem. Gentek had backup security systems that just activated when she destroyed their main bunker. The building was going into lockdown mode. Maya struggled to her feet, looking down at the facility spread below her. She could see Navy SEALs in tactical gear moving between buildings. But Building 7 was sealed tight, its blast doors closed and its windows covered by steel shutters. She asked how long before they could breach those doors. The answer came that it would be hours, maybe. And they weren't the only ones with backup plans. Communications from Gentek's corporate headquarters were being monitored, and they had activated something called Protocol Omega. The name sent ice through Maya's veins. Protocol Omega had been a theoretical contingency plan discussed during the Firestorm project. What to do if the technology fell into enemy hands? The answer had been simple and terrifying. Destroy everything, including any witnesses who might compromise operational security. Maya realized they were going to eliminate all evidence, including the ambassador. The response confirmed this. SELL team estimated 20 minutes before they could breach Building 7's defenses. But Protocol Omega went into effect in 15. Maya was already moving, half running and half sliding down the mountainside toward the facility. Her flight suit was torn, and her body protested every step, but she'd been in worse situations during her military career. The key was to keep moving and keep thinking. She asked to be patched through to the SEAL team leader. The connection was already made. Commander Blake was introduced to Lieutenant Commander Maya Roberts. A new voice crackled through, identifying himself as Lieutenant Commander James Blake, SEAL Team 6. He understood she had knowledge of this facility's security systems. Maya replied, vaulting over a concrete barrier and sprinting toward Building 7, that she had helped design some of them. She asked what their current situation was. Blake reported they had eyes on multiple hostiles inside the building, but they were heavily armed and well prepared. The blast doors were 2 feet of reinforced steel. They didn't have anything that could get through them quickly. Maya could see the SEAL team now, taking cover behind vehicles and concrete barriers around Building 7's perimeter. The building looked like a fortress, its few windows now covered by steel plates, and its single entrance sealed by blast doors that belonged on a bank vault. But Maya knew something the architects hadn't counted on. She told Commander Blake there was a maintenance tunnel that connected Building 7 to the facility's central ventilation system. It was added after the original construction to support some specialized research equipment. The entrance was on the north side, behind the emergency generator housing. Blake replied they had checked that area and it was sealed. Maya explained. It wasn't sealed from the inside. The tunnel had emergency access panels that could only be opened from inside the ventilation system. But if someone could get into the system from another building, she trailed off, realizing what she was suggesting. Blake asked if she was thinking of going in there herself. Maya was already changing direction, heading for Building 3, which housed the main air handling equipment for the entire complex. She asked how long they had before Protocol Omega activated. Blake replied 12 minutes now. Maya said then they didn't have time to argue about this. The entrance to Building 3 was unsecured, a simple steel door marked with warnings about authorized personnel only. Maya's old access code still worked on the electronic lock, a security oversight that Gentek would probably regret if any of them survived the next few minutes. Inside, the building was a maze of massive air handling units, ductwork, and mechanical equipment that hummed and roared with industrial efficiency. Maya had studied the schematics during her time with the Firestorm project, but seeing the system in person was still overwhelming. She requested guidance through this, explaining the tunnel entrance should be somewhere near the main air intake manifold. The response came that blueprints were being pulled up, along with concern about whether she was sure about this. The tunnel was barely big enough for one person, and if they detected her, Maya replied they were going to kill the ambassador anyway if they didn't try. She found the access panel described, a 3-foot square opening that led into the facility's ventilation system. The space beyond was dark and cramped, barely wide enough for her shoulders. She informed Commander Blake she was going in, asking for 10 minutes before they started their assault. If they didn't hear from her by then, they should breach the doors anyway. Blake protested this was insane, that she wasn't trained for close-quarters combat. Maya smiled grimly as she squeezed into the ventilation tunnel, replying that she had just stolen a prototype fighter jet, conducted a one-woman air assault on a fortified position, and crashed $350 million of taxpayer property into a mountain. At this point, sanity was a relative concept. The tunnel was a nightmare of sharp metal edges and mechanical obstacles. But Maya pressed forward on hands and knees, following directions through the darkness. Behind her, she could hear Commander Blake coordinating his team's assault. Ahead, somewhere in the maze of concrete and steel, Ambassador Williams was waiting. Protocol Omega was now 8 minutes from activation. Maya crawled faster. The ventilation tunnel ended at a grate overlooking Building 7's main laboratory. And what Maya saw below made her blood freeze. Ambassador Williams sat in a chair in the center of the room. His distinguished face was bruised and cut, but his posture remained dignified. Around him, 6 armed mercenaries in tactical gear were positioning explosive charges throughout the laboratory. Their movements were efficient and professional. At a bank of computers along the far wall, technicians were frantically downloading data while simultaneously preparing demolition charges that would erase every trace of their activities. Maya counted the opposition and calculated her odds. 6 armed professionals against 1 exhausted pilot with no weapons and no backup. The math wasn't encouraging. But then she noticed something that changed everything. Dr. Elizabeth Voss, Gentech's chief technology officer, was standing near the ambassador with what looked like a detonator in her hand. Maya recognized her from intelligence briefings during her time with the Firestorm Project, a brilliant scientist who'd been suspected of selling military secrets, but never prosecuted due to lack of evidence. Voss announced to her team that it was -5 minutes until Protocol Omega activation, and all personnel should prepare for facility sterilization. The ambassador looked up at the ceiling, and for a moment, Maya could have sworn he was looking directly at her through the ventilation grate. Then he did something that made Maya's heart swell with pride and terror in equal measure. The ambassador said clearly, his voice carrying across the laboratory, that these people had no idea what they'd done. Commander Roberts was coming for him, and there wasn't a force on Earth that could stop her. One of the mercenaries laughed harshly, telling the old man that his pilot friend was dead, that they watched her plane go down in flames. The ambassador replied with absolute conviction that she wasn't dead. He'd known Maya Roberts since she was a cadet. Death itself would have to get in line. Voss raised the detonator, saying enough chatter. Protocol Omega activation in 60 seconds. Maya knew she was out of time and options. The SEAL team wouldn't reach them before the explosives detonated, and she couldn't take on 6 armed mercenaries in a straight fight. But she could create chaos. Maya used her elbow to smash through the ventilation grate, dropping into the laboratory like an avenging angel. She landed hard on an equipment table, scattering scientific instruments and drawing every weapon in the room toward her position. She greeted Elizabeth, rolling behind a bank of servers as automatic weapons fire erupted around her, asking if she missed her. The laboratory erupted into chaos. Mercenaries shouted coordinates and flanking positions, while their bullets chewed apart expensive research equipment. Sparks flew from damaged electronics, and chemical smoke began filling the air from punctured containers. Maya used the confusion to her advantage, moving from cover to cover while the mercenaries tried to pin down her position. Her years of combat training hadn't prepared her for close-quarters battle in a confined space, but they had taught her that aggression and unpredictability could overcome superior numbers. She shouted for the ambassador to stay down, grabbing a fire extinguisher from a nearby wall mount and hurling it at the nearest mercenary. The improvised projectile caught him in the face, sending him stumbling backward into a bank of computers. Voss's voice was rising with panic as she announced T-30 seconds, realizing her carefully planned operation was falling apart around her. Maya spotted a fire axe mounted on the far wall and sprinted toward it, dodging bullets and leaping over laboratory benches like a contestant on a lethal obstacle course. Her fingers closed around the axe handle just as two mercenaries rounded the corner, their assault rifles already tracking toward her. The axe blade bit deep into the first mercenary's weapon, ruining his aim and giving Maya the split second she needed to tackle. Maya managed to wrench the pistol away from her opponent and put 2 rounds center mass into the second mercenary before rolling away from return fire. 4 hostiles down, 2 to go, plus Vess herself. But 15 seconds wasn't enough time to clear the room and get the ambassador to safety. That's when the Navy SEALs decided to make their entrance. The blast doors exploded inward with a sound like thunder, followed immediately by flashbang grenades that turned the laboratory into a strobe-lit hell of sound and fury. Through the chaos, Maya could hear Commander Blake's voice shouting tactical commands as his team poured into the room. Voss raised the detonator with shaking hands, her finger hovering over the activation switch. Maya didn't think. She simply threw the fire axe with all her remaining strength. The heavy blade rotated end over end across the laboratory, catching Voss in the shoulder and sending her crashing backward into a bank of servers. The detonator flew from her hands, skittering across the floor toward the ambassador's chair. Ambassador Williams, showing the kind of quick thinking that had made him a legendary diplomat, kicked the detonator as hard as he could. The device sailed through the air and disappeared down an open floor drain. Maya gasped that Protocol Omega was deactivated, collapsing against a laboratory bench as Navy SEALs secured the remaining hostiles. She asked if the ambassador was hurt. Williams shook his head, tears streaming down his face, but his voice steady, saying he knew she'd come. He told them she'd come. Maya staggered across the room and helped the ambassador to his feet while SEAL team members swept the facility for additional threats. Around them, the laboratory was a ruin of damaged equipment and scattered debris, but none of that mattered. The ambassador was safe. Maya called out to Commander Blake that he would want to secure all the computer equipment, as this facility contained evidence of the largest intelligence breach in recent history. Blake replied they were already on it, with teams downloading everything before Gentech could activate any remote deletion protocols. Maya looked around the destroyed laboratory, thinking about the chain of events that had brought her here. 12 hours ago, she'd been testing flight simulators in a comfortable civilian job. Now she was standing in the ruins of a conspiracy that reached to the highest levels of government and defense contracting. Ambassador Williams asked quietly what happened now. Maya looked at the distinguished diplomat who had faced down armed mercenaries with nothing but faith in her abilities, saying now they go home, and she finds out if she's going to spend the rest of her life in prison or get her old job back. The ambassador's face hardened with determination, declaring that over his dead body would they put her in prison. What she did that day saved more than just his life. It saved countless others who would have been victims of Firestorm technology in the wrong hands. Through the shattered laboratory windows, Maya could see news helicopters circling the facility, like mechanical vultures. The story of the woman who stole a fighter jet to save the American ambassador was about to become front-page news around the world. But that was tomorrow's problem. Today, the only thing that mattered was the mission accomplished, and the knowledge that sometimes being extraordinary meant making impossible choices when everything was on the line. Commander Blake approached them, his tactical gear dusty from the assault, informing Commander Roberts that there were some people in Washington who were very eager to speak with her. But first, medical teams wanted to check both of them over. Maya nodded, still not quite believing that the nightmare was over. She asked Commander Blake about the people behind this, the ones who gave Gentech their orders. Blake replied that was above his pay grade, but he could tell her that this investigation was just getting started. What she uncovered that day was going to have repercussions for years to come. Ambassador Williams placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, asking if she was in trouble for stealing the airplane. Maya looked at the ambassador and realized that she honestly didn't know. Technically, she'd committed multiple felonies, violated numerous military regulations, and caused millions of dollars in property damage. But she'd also exposed a conspiracy that threatened national security and saved the life of a high-ranking diplomat. She said she didn't know, but whatever happened, it was worth it. Williams squeezed her hand, saying he thought she was a hero. Maya smiled, feeling tears she hadn't known she was holding back finally start to fall, replying that she was just a pilot who did what needed to be done. That's all. Outside, the desert sun was climbing toward its zenith, painting the mountains in shades of gold and amber. It was going to be a beautiful day. The debriefing lasted 22 hours and involved more alphabet agencies than Maya knew existed. The FBI, CIA, NSA, DHS, Inspector General's Office, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, and at least 4 congressional oversight committees all wanted their pound of flesh from the woman who had stolen a prototype fighter jet and crashed it into a mountain. Maya sat in a windowless conference room at the Pentagon, her borrowed Navy uniform a stark contrast to the sea of different colored uniforms and expensive suits surrounding her. Ambassador Williams had been taken to Walter Reed Medical Center for observation, then released with minor injuries and a promise to testify on Maya's behalf when the time came. Congressman Thomas Harrington, chairman of the House Defense Committee, asked Lieutenant Commander Roberts to go through this one more time. She became aware of Ambassador Williams' kidnapping at approximately 2,130 hours 3 days ago, and her first instinct was to steal a $350 million prototype aircraft. Maya had answered this question at least 30 times, but she maintained her composure, explaining that the kidnappers gave the government 8 hours to comply with their demands. By the time she learned of the situation, there were only 5 hours remaining. Traditional rescue channels would not have been able to mobilize quickly enough. Harrington said sharply that so she decided to take matters into her own hands. Maya replied that she decided to save Ambassador Williams' life. Admiral Marcus Chen, who had been observing silently for most of the proceedings, finally spoke up, telling the congressman he thought they were missing the larger picture. Commander Roberts' actions, while unorthodox, exposed a conspiracy that had compromised American military technology for at least 7 years. Gentech Industries had been selling classified information to foreign governments, using kidnapping and extortion to acquire research data they couldn't legally obtain. Senator Dianne Foster, ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, leaned forward, saying that didn't excuse theft of military property and unauthorized use of force. Commander Roberts destroyed a $350 million aircraft and conducted what amounted to an unsanctioned military operation on foreign soil. Maya interjected, her voice carefully controlled, that with respect, the facility she attacked was operated by traitors using American military technology to threaten an American diplomat. If defending her country and its representatives made her a criminal, then she accepted that label. The room fell silent. Maya could see some of the officials exchanging glances, recognizing the political impossibility of prosecuting a decorated officer who had exposed a major espionage operation while rescuing a kidnapped ambassador. The media was already portraying her as a hero, with hashtags like Maya Roberts and Phoenix pilot trending worldwide. FBI Director Harold Thompson cleared his throat, saying they needed to focus on the intelligence value of what Commander Roberts had given them. The data recovered from the Gentech facility had already led to arrests in 6 countries and the identification of 23 compromised defense contractors. This was one of the largest counterintelligence breakthroughs in a decade. Senator Foster replied that may be, but they could not simply ignore the methods used to obtain this intelligence. If they excused Commander Roberts' actions, what message did that send to other service members who might decide to take matters into their own hands? General Rebecca Lawrence, chairwoman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, had been silent throughout most of the proceedings, but now she fixed Senator Foster with a steely gaze, saying the Phoenix program was her responsibility. Its security was compromised long before Commander Roberts' involvement. If anyone should be held accountable for this situation, it was those who failed to detect Gentech's infiltration of their defense systems. The legal distinction was subtle, but important. By accepting institutional responsibility, General Lawrence was providing Maya with political cover while simultaneously acknowledging the systemic failures that had allowed the situation to develop in the first place. Congressman Harrington shuffled through his papers, asking Commander Roberts what her understanding was of her current legal status. Maya had been dreading this question, saying she assumed she would be facing court-martial for theft of military property, at minimum. She understood the consequences of her actions and accepted responsibility for them. He asked if she had to do it again, knowing what she knew now about the legal ramifications. Maya didn't hesitate, saying she would do exactly the same thing. Ambassador Williams was safe. A foreign espionage operation has been exposed, and classified military technology has been secured. If that costs me my career or my freedom, it's a price I'm willing to pay. The room fell silent again. Maya could see something shifting in the faces around the table, a recognition that they were dealing with someone whose moral compass pointed toward protecting others regardless of personal cost. Director Thompson spoke again. There is another consideration here. Commander Roberts' actions have generated significant public attention. The story of the woman who stole a fighter jet to save Ambassador Williams has captured international media coverage. Prosecuting her now would create a public relations nightmare for the administration. Senator Foster frowned. We don't make legal decisions based on public opinion polls. No, but we do consider the broader implications of our actions, Thompson countered. Commander Roberts has become a symbol of American values, protecting diplomats, exposing corruption, standing up to foreign threats. Prosecuting her would send a message that we punish heroes while rewarding the corporations that sell our secrets to enemy nations. General Lawrence nodded. There's also the practical consideration that Commander Roberts' expertise will be valuable in cleaning up the mess created by Gentech and their co-conspirators. She has intimate knowledge of the Firestorm project and other classified programs that were compromised. Congressman Harrington closed his folder. Commander Roberts, the committee will need some time to deliberate. You're dismissed for now, but please remain available for further questioning. Maya stood, feeling like she just survived another form of aerial combat, this one fought with words instead of missiles. Thank you, sir. As she walked toward the door, Ambassador Williams entered the conference room, looking considerably better than the last time she'd seen him. His face lit up when he saw her. Commander Roberts, he said warmly, I was hoping to catch you before you left. Mr. Ambassador, Maya replied, surprised to see him. I thought you were still recovering. Some things are more important than rest, he said, then turned to address the committee. Ladies and gentlemen, I've prepared a statement regarding Commander Roberts' actions that I'd like to read into the record. Maya watched in amazement as the ambassador who had faced down terrorists with dignity now faced down a room full of politicians with equal determination. His statement was eloquent, passionate, and left no doubt about his support for the woman who had risked everything to save him. As Maya was escorted from the Pentagon to temporary quarters at nearby Fort Myer, her mind raced with possibilities. The most likely outcome was still a court-martial, though perhaps with reduced charges given the circumstances. Her military career was almost certainly over, regardless of the final decision. Strangely, the thought didn't bother her as much as she'd expected. She'd already left military service once before, uncomfortable with the ethical compromises the Firestorm project had demanded. Perhaps civilian life was where she truly belonged. 3 days later, Maya sat in another conference room, this one in the West Wing of the White House. The President's Chief of Staff, Marian Garcia, sat across from her, flanked by the Secretary of Defense and the Attorney General. "Commander Roberts," Garcia began, "the President has reviewed your case personally and has made a decision regarding your future." Maya straightened in her chair, preparing for the worst. "I understand, ma'am. After consultation with the Joint Chiefs, congressional leadership, and the ambassador himself, the President has decided that a court-martial would not serve the interests of justice or national security in this case." Maya blinked, not quite processing what she was hearing. "I'm sorry?" Secretary of Defense Jonathan Mills leaned forward. "What Ms. Garcia is saying, Commander, is that there will be no charges filed against you, military or civilian. Your actions, while unorthodox, are being classified as an authorized covert operation retroactively approved under National Security Directive 1723. "I don't understand," Maya said, struggling to grasp the legal maneuver they were executing. Attorney General Sofia Rivera smiled slightly. "It's quite simple, Commander. We're rewriting history. According to the official record, you were temporarily reactivated for a classified operation to rescue Ambassador Williams and expose the Gentek conspiracy. The Phoenix prototype was always intended to be sacrificed as part of the mission. You didn't steal anything, you were following orders." Maya sat back, stunned. "That's not what happened." "No," Garcia agreed, "but it's what the historical record will show. The alternative is to admit that a single officer with the right skills and sufficient motivation could commandeer one of our most advanced weapon systems and use it for an unauthorized mission, however noble the cause. That's not a precedent we're eager to establish." Maya understood the political calculation. By creating this fiction, they were protecting themselves as much as they were protecting her. The systemic failures that had allowed Gentek to infiltrate the defense establishment and that had necessitated her desperate rescue mission would be obscured by this new narrative. "What happens now?" she asked. Secretary Mills pushed a folder across the table. "That depends on you, Commander. Inside this folder are 3 options." Maya opened the folder and scanned the documents inside. "Option 1, Mills continued, is honorable discharge with full benefits, a promotion to commander, and a position with a defense contractor of your choosing. Many are already expressing interest in your services." Maya nodded, unsurprised. Her skills would be valuable in the private sector. Option 2 is reassignment to naval intelligence with a focus on identifying and preventing future security breaches like the one at Gentek. You'd work directly with the Joint Task Force investigating the broader conspiracy. That option was tempting. Maya's intimate knowledge of the Firestorm project and the people involved would make her an asset to the investigation. "And option 3, she asked. Garcia and Mills exchanged glances. "Option 3 is unconventional," Garcia said carefully. "After your actions made international news, we've received an interesting request from the Air Force's elite flight demonstration squadron," Mills explained. "They'd like to offer you a position as their first female solo pilot." Maya's jaw dropped. "The Thunderbirds? You can't be serious." "Completely serious," Mills replied. "Your flying skills are unmatched, and your public profile makes you ideal for recruitment and public relations purposes. Plus, it sends a message about women in combat roles that aligns with the President's broader policy objectives." Maya stared at the 3 options before her, each representing a dramatically different future. "How long do I have to decide?" "Take the weekend," Garcia said, standing to indicate the meeting was concluding. "But I should mention that there's a Rose Garden ceremony scheduled for Monday morning where the President plans to award you the Distinguished Flying Cross for your actions. It would be helpful to have your decision by then." As Maya was escorted from the White House, her head spinning with possibilities, She found Ambassador Williams waiting for her outside. "I hear they gave you options," he said as they walked together across the immaculately maintained grounds. "How did you know that?" Maya asked. The ambassador smiled. "I may have suggested one or two of them. The Thunderbirds were my idea, actually." Maya shook her head in disbelief. "Why would you do that?" "Because the world needs to see more people like you, Maya. People who are willing to do what's right, no matter the cost. And frankly, I think you've earned the right to fly for the joy of it, rather than always in combat or testing situations." They reached the White House gates where a government car waited to take Maya back to her temporary quarters. "Which option would you choose?" she asked him. The ambassador considered the question carefully. "I think you already know the answer to that. The question is whether you're brave enough to accept it." As Maya rode back to Fort Myer, she looked out at the Washington Monument standing tall against the evening sky. Her thoughts drifted to the Phoenix, the magnificent aircraft she'd flown on her final unauthorized mission. There had been a moment during that flight, even as missiles streaked toward her and alarms blared in the cockpit, when she'd felt more alive than at any other point in her life. Was that what the ambassador had meant? That she belonged in the sky, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Monday morning arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze that rustled the Rose Garden's famous greenery. Maya stood at attention in her dress uniform, newly adorned with the rank insignia of a full commander. The promotion had been part of the deal, regardless of which option she chose. The ceremony was brief but powerful. The president spoke eloquently about duty, courage, and the American spirit. Ambassador Williams described his captivity and rescue with diplomatic precision that somehow managed to make Maya sound even more heroic than the media already had. When it came time for Maya to receive her medal and make a statement, she stepped forward with the confidence that had carried her through countless missions, both authorized and not. "Mr. President, Mr. Ambassador, distinguished guests," she began, her voice steady despite the cameras broadcasting her words worldwide. "I stand before you today not as someone special, but as someone who simply refused to accept that nothing could be done. Throughout history, progress has never been made by those who said, 'This is impossible.' It's been made by those who said, 'This must be done.'" She paused, looking out at the assembled dignitaries and media representatives. "I've been asked many times if I would make the same choice again, knowing the risks and potential consequences. My answer remains yes, without hesitation. Not because I enjoy breaking rules or defying authority, but because there are moments in life when the right path is crystal clear, even when it's not the easy one." The president stepped forward to pin the Distinguished Flying Cross to her uniform. The medal felt heavier than she'd expected, weighted with the responsibility it represented. "As for my future," Maya continued after thanking the president, "I've made my decision." The gathered crowd leaned forward slightly, eager to hear which path she'd chosen. "Starting next month, I'll be joining the United States Air Force Thunderbirds as a demonstration pilot. Not because it's the safest option or the most prestigious, but because it allows me to share with others the pure joy and freedom of flight that has guided my life since I was a child watching planes overhead." The announcement was met with applause, particularly from a group of young women in Air Force cadet uniforms who had been invited to the ceremony specifically to meet Maya afterward. "My message to them, and to anyone watching who faces obstacles that seem insurmountable, is simple. The sky has never been the limit. It's just the beginning." After the ceremony, as Maya made her way through congratulations and well wishes, she found herself face to face with General Catherine Winters, the officer who had coordinated the SEAL team rescue during her mission. "Commander Roberts," Winters said, extending her hand. "Congratulations on your medal and your new assignment." "Thank you, General," Maya replied. "I'm still trying to process it all." Winters smiled knowingly. "I thought you might be. Which is why I brought you something." She handed Maya a small weathered patch, the kind pilots often collect to commemorate significant missions. This one showed a phoenix rising from flames, with the words, "Call sign Phoenix" embroidered beneath it. "Where did you get this?" Maya asked, running her fingers over the detailed needlework. "I had it made after your first experimental test flight 3 years ago," Winters explained. "You flew that prototype with such skill that the entire test team started calling you Phoenix behind your back. It was going to be your official call sign when you were formally assigned to the project. But I resigned my commission before." "That happened," Maya said softly. "Yes, you did. Which is why I kept it all this time, hoping you might come back to us someday." Winters clasped Maya's shoulder firmly. "The Thunderbirds are getting the best pilot I've ever seen. Make us proud." Maya nodded, suddenly unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "One more thing," Winters added. "Your name has already been added to the master roster at Nellis Air Force Base. When you report for duty next month, no one will question your right to be there." The significance wasn't lost on Maya. Nellis was the home of the Thunderbirds, and the master roster contained the names of every pilot authorized to fly in their restricted airspace. Her call sign Phoenix would be there alongside the most elite pilots in the Air Force. No matter what challenges lay ahead, no one would ever refuse her entry again. As the Rose Garden ceremony concluded and guests began to disperse, Maya found herself surrounded by the cadets who had attended the event. Their eyes shone with admiration and questions. "Commander Roberts," one young woman asked, "was it scary, flying that mission alone with no backup?" Maya considered the question carefully. "It wasn't about being scared or brave," she answered. "It was about focusing on what needed to be done, one step at a time. When you break an impossible task down into individual actions, suddenly it becomes manageable." Another cadet raised her hand. "How did you know you could pull it off?" "The odds were completely against you." "I didn't know," Maya admitted. "But I knew I had to try. Sometimes that's all you can do, your absolute best, with no guarantee of success." The alternative was doing nothing, which wasn't really an alternative at all. As Maya spoke with these future officers, sharing insights and encouragement, she realized that perhaps this was the most important part of her journey. Not the dramatic rescue or the prestigious medal, but this moment of connection with those who would carry the torch forward. The sun shone brightly overhead, casting the White House in a golden glow that seemed to underscore the optimism of the moment. Maya Roberts, once branded a rogue officer for stealing a prototype fighter jet, was now officially recognized as a hero whose actions had exposed a dangerous conspiracy and saved a diplomat's life. But more importantly, she had discovered her true purpose, inspiring others to find the courage to do what's right, even when the odds seem impossible and the path forward uncertain. And that, she reflected as she watched the cadets' eager faces, was worth more than any medal or assignment. It was worth everything. 6 months later, the desert sun beat down on the tarmac at Nellis Air Force Base, creating heat barrages that danced across the runway. Maya Roberts stood beside her gleaming F-16 Thunderbird, its distinctive red, white, and blue paint scheme reflecting the harsh Nevada sunlight. Her flight suit bore the patch General Winters had given her, the Phoenix emblem now unofficially incorporated into her Thunderbird uniform, a quiet reminder of the journey that had brought her here. 5 minutes to showtime, Phoenix, came the voice of Colonel James Harper, Thunderbird 1 and the squadron commander, through her radio. "Copy that, boss," Maya replied, completing her final pre-flight checks with the methodical precision that had become her trademark. Today's airshow was special. Not only was it the largest of the season, with over 300,000 spectators expected, but Ambassador Williams would be attending as the guest of honor. It was the first time Maya would see him since the White House ceremony 6 months ago. As Maya climbed into her cockpit, her mind drifted back to her first day at Nellis. She had arrived with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, unsure of how the elite Thunderbird pilots would receive her. Her story had made international headlines, but that didn't guarantee acceptance among the tight-knit community of demonstration pilots. She remembered walking into the squadron building, her new orders in hand, and approaching the security desk where a young Air Force sergeant sat reviewing identification cards. "Commander Maya Roberts reporting for duty," she had said, presenting her papers. The sergeant had glanced at her documentation, then frowned slightly. "I don't see your name on the authorized entry list, Commander. Let me double-check." Maya had felt a familiar sinking sensation in her stomach. Despite General Winter's assurances, despite the White House ceremony and the Distinguished Flying Cross, now part of her service record, there was still resistance to her presence. "There must be some mistake," she had said calmly. "I'm the new Thunderbird 6. The sergeant had looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I need to verify this with the squadron commander before I can grant you access. These are restricted facilities." Just as Maya was preparing to call General Winters, Colonel Harper himself had emerged from the inner offices, drawn by the commotion. "Is there a problem here, Sergeant?" he had asked. "Sir, I have a Commander Roberts attempting to access the facility, but she's not on my authorized personnel list." Colonel Harper had studied Maya for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he'd turned to the large digital display screen on the wall behind the security desk, the master roster of all pilots authorized to fly in Thunderbird airspace. "Sergeant, do you see that name there? Third from the bottom?" he'd asked, pointing to the screen. The sergeant had looked where the colonel was pointing, and his eyes had widened. There on the screen, clear as day, was CMDR Maya Phoenix. Roberts listed with full flight and access privileges. "The master roster is updated directly from Air Force Headquarters, Sergeant," Colonel Harper had explained. "Perhaps your local list needs refreshing." The young sergeant had turned bright red. "Yes, sir." "I apologize, Commander Roberts. Welcome to the Thunderbirds." As the security doors had opened to admit her, Colonel Harper had extended his hand. "Welcome aboard, Phoenix. We've been expecting you." It was only later that Maya learned the truth. Her name had been on the master roster all along. The moment had been engineered by Colonel Harper and the other Thunderbird pilots as their unique way of welcoming her to the team, by creating a situation where her call sign appeared on the master roster at the dramatic moment. They were acknowledging both her unconventional path to joining them and their complete acceptance of her as one of their own. Now 6 months later, Maya was no longer the newcomer with the controversial past. She was Phoenix Thunderbird 6, and one of the most requested pilots for media appearances and recruitment events. Her journey from rogue officer to national hero had become a powerful story that the Air Force used to inspire a new generation of pilots, particularly young women who had previously seen few examples of female aviators in high-profile roles. Maya settled into her cockpit and began the startup sequence for her F-16. Unlike the stolen Phoenix prototype from that fateful day, this aircraft was meant for precision and showmanship rather than combat. But the feeling of belonging in the sky remained the same. Colonel Harper's voice came through her headset, beginning the familiar pre-show ritual as he called for Thunderbirds to check in. "Thunderbird 2 responded ready," from Major Sarah Chen flying right wing. "Thunderbird 3 ready" came from Captain Derek Washington flying left wing. "Thunderbird 4 ready" from Major Alex Rodriguez in slot position. "Thunderbird 5 ready" from Captain James Wilson, lead solo. Maya confirmed Thunderbird 6 ready. As the opposing solo, she would perform the most dynamic and challenging maneuvers in the show, often flying directly at her teammates in carefully choreographed near misses that thrilled audiences. Colonel Harper informed Phoenix that her family was in the VIP section, and Ambassador Williams asked him to tell her he was looking forward to her special maneuver. Maya smiled behind her oxygen mask. The Phoenix Rising was a unique solo maneuver. she had developed specifically for today's show. A series of climbing rolls and vertical inversions that mimicked the mythical bird rising from the ashes. It was both a nod to her call sign and a symbolic representation of her own journey. She copied that the boss, confirming the Phoenix would rise on schedule. As the Thunderbirds taxied toward the runway in perfect formation, Maya caught sight of the crowd gathering along the flight line. Somewhere in that sea of faces were the people who had supported her through the darkest days after her unauthorized mission. Admiral Jackson, General Winters, and now Ambassador Williams. But there were also thousands of strangers, people who knew her only as the pilot who had risked everything to do what was right. Young girls who might look up at her F-16 streaking across the sky and for the first time think, that could be me someday. The responsibility of that was both humbling and energizing. The tower controller announced Thunderbirds were cleared for takeoff. Colonel Harper responded with Roger that, telling Thunderbirds to fly. 6 F-16s accelerated down the runway in perfect formation, lifting off the ground as one and climbing into the crystal blue Nevada sky. For the next hour, they would demonstrate the pinnacle of precision flying, showcasing both the capabilities of American aerospace engineering and the skill of the pilots who had mastered these complex machines. As Maya broke formation for her first solo sequence, pulling her aircraft into a vertical climb that would transition into a series of rolls, she felt the familiar rush that came with pushing the boundaries of what was possible. This was why she had chosen the Thunderbirds over the other options presented to her. Not for the prestige or the public adoration, but for these moments when it was just her and the aircraft becoming one entity, dancing among the clouds. Show progressed flawlessly, each maneuver executed with the precision that had made the Thunderbirds legendary. As they moved into the final sequence, Maya prepared for the Phoenix rising, her signature contribution to the program. Colonel Harper's voice informed Phoenix she was cleared for her solo finale. Maya copied that, announcing Phoenix commencing final maneuver. Maya pushed her throttle forward, feeling the F-16 surge with power as she climbed steeply. At 5,000 feet, she rolled inverted, then pulled through a split-S maneuver that sent her diving back toward the Earth. Just as the crowd was holding its collective breath, expecting her to pull up into a standard recovery, Maya instead initiated a series of precise rolling turns that created a spiral pattern in the sky. With the vapor from her wingtips tracing her path, the maneuver created the unmistakable image of a phoenix with wings spread wide, climbing from the depths toward the sun. It was a feat of flying that required absolute mastery of the aircraft and a deep understanding of aerodynamics. As she completed the sequence and rejoined the formation for the final pass, the radio crackled with Colonel Harper's voice praising the beautiful work, saying Phoenix had just set a new standard. The crowd's reaction was audible even over the roar of jet engines, a wave of applause and cheers that washed over the airfield. Maya allowed herself a small smile, not because of the accolades, but because of what that maneuver represented, the transformation of her most difficult moments into something beautiful and inspiring. After landing and completing the post-flight procedures, Maya made her way to the autograph session that traditionally followed each performance. The line of people waiting to meet her stretched far beyond those of her teammates, a testament to the public's fascination with her story. As she signed programs, photos, and model aircraft, Maya took time with each person, especially the young girls who approached with shy admiration. To them, she offered not just a signature but a few moments of genuine connection and encouragement. One 10-year-old asked if she was scared when she stole that jet to save the ambassador, her eyes wide with curiosity. Maya considered the question thoughtfully, replying that she wasn't thinking about being scared. She was thinking about what needed to be done. Sometimes when something really matters, you focus on the goal rather than the fear. The girl nodded solemnly, as if memorizing this wisdom for future reference. Near the end of the session, Maya looked up to find Ambassador Williams standing before her, accompanied by a distinguished-looking woman in Air Force dress blues, whom Maya immediately recognized as General Rebecca Lawrence, chairwoman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The ambassador greeted Commander Roberts warmly, saying that was quite a performance. Her Phoenix rising was particularly meaningful to those who knew the full story. Maya stood and saluted General Lawrence before shaking hands with the ambassador, thanking them both for coming and saying it meant a lot to have them there. General Lawrence replied they wouldn't have missed it, but they weren't just there as spectators. They had something to discuss with her. If she could spare a few minutes after her duties, they were complete. Maya felt a flicker of concern. Had something gone wrong with the Gentech investigation? Was there new information about Project Firestorm? She agreed, of course, saying she would be finished there in about 15 minutes. The general said excellent. They would wait for her in the VIP lounge. As they walked away, Maya tried to focus on the remaining fans seeking autographs, but her mind raced with possibilities. The presence of both the ambassador and the chairwoman of the Joint Chiefs suggested something significant was happening. When she finally made her way to the VIP lounge, Maya found not only Ambassador Williams and General Lawrence, but also Admiral Jackson, her former commanding officer who had set her on the path that led to the unauthorized rescue mission. Admiral Jackson greeted her as commander with a handshake that turned into a brief embrace, saying outstanding flying that day. She had done the Navy proud, even if she was wearing Air Force colors now. Maya smiled at the good-natured inter-service rivalry, thanking him and saying it was good to see him. General Lawrence indicated a chair at the small conference table, asking her to sit down and explaining that what they were about to discuss was classified at the highest levels. Maya took the offered seat, her expression turning serious, asking if there had been a development with the Gentech case. Ambassador Williams replied that you could say that. Thanks to the evidence recovered during her mission, they had uncovered a network of defense contractors and foreign agents much larger than initially suspected. The investigation had led to over 50 arrests so far, including 3 senior Pentagon officials and a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. Admiral Jackson added that the damage they could have done with the Firestorm technology was incalculable. Her actions didn't just save the ambassador. They may have prevented a fundamental shift in the global balance of power. Maya absorbed this information, grateful that her risky decision had yielded such significant results. She said she was glad to hear the investigation had been successful, but she was guessing that wasn't why they were all there that day. General Lawrence nodded, saying perceptive as always. No, they were there because of something else that emerged from the investigation. Something about her, specifically. Maya tensed slightly, asking about her. The general slid a folder across the table. It bore the distinctive marking of the highest security classification, Cosmic Top Secret, a level Maya had rarely encountered even during her work on classified projects. General Lawrence continued that what they discovered was that she wasn't targeted by Gentech simply because of her knowledge of the Firestorm project. She was targeted because of what their psychological profiling revealed about her. Maya opened the folder cautiously. Inside was a detailed psychological assessment, with her name at the top, prepared by Gentech's Internal Security Division. As she skimmed the document, certain phrases jumped out at her. Unique combination of technical expertise and moral courage. Unwilling to compromise ethical standards even when career advancement is at stake. Demonstrates exceptional creative problem solving under extreme pressure. Poses significant threat to operation due to unpredictable response patterns and willingness to act outside established protocols when morally justified. They were afraid of me, Maya said softly, looking up from the document. Not just because of what I knew, but because of who I am. Exactly, Ambassador Williams confirmed. According to the files we recovered, Gentech had identified you as The single greatest threat to their operation years ago, even before you resigned your commission over ethical concerns about the Firestorm project. They had been monitoring you ever since, waiting for an opportunity to eliminate you as a potential obstacle. Which is why they orchestrated the ambassador's kidnapping, Admiral Jackson explained. It wasn't just about acquiring the Firestorm technology. It was about creating a situation where you would be compelled to act outside official channels, thereby discrediting or eliminating you as a threat. Maya sat back, processing this revelation. They used my own moral compass against me. They knew I wouldn't stand by while the ambassador was in danger, especially when I had the skills to do something about it. Yes, General Lawrence agreed. But what they failed to calculate was the extent of your capabilities and determination. Their psychological profile identified you as a potential threat, but they underestimated just how effective you would be when pushed to act. And that, Ambassador Williams added, is precisely why we're here today. General Lawrence leaned forward, her expression intensely serious. Commander Roberts, we're establishing a new joint task force focused on identifying and countering similar threats to national security cases where traditional military and intelligence responses might be inadequate or too slow to be effective. A rapid response unit for unconventional situations, Admiral Jackson elaborated. Small, elite, and operating with significant autonomy when necessary. Maya's pulse quickened as she began to understand where this conversation was heading. And you want me involved in this task force? We want you to lead it, General Lawrence stated flatly. Your unique combination of technical expertise, tactical skill, and moral clarity is exactly what this initiative requires. The official designation would be Joint Special Operations Command Task Force Phoenix. Maya looked from face to face, searching for signs that this was some elaborate prank. Finding none, she asked, "Why me?" "There are more experienced officers, with cleaner records and higher ranks." "Because of what's in that psychological profile," Ambassador Williams said gently. "What Gentech saw as a threat, we see as an asset. You demonstrated the ability to make impossible decisions under extreme pressure, to act decisively when protocols would have resulted in failure, and to maintain your moral center even when it meant significant personal risk. In simpler terms," Admiral Jackson added with a slight smile, "you're the only person we know who would steal a fighter jet to do the right thing and actually pull it off." Maya couldn't help but laugh at the blunt assessment. "When you put it that way, it sounds a bit reckless." "Not reckless," General Lawrence corrected. "Determined. There's a difference. Recklessness doesn't plan meticulously or calculate risks with the precision you demonstrated. What you did was extraordinary, but it wasn't impulsive." Maya considered the offer carefully. Leading Task Force Phoenix would mean leaving the Thunderbirds, just as she was hitting her stride with the team. But it would also mean the opportunity to build something new, a unit specifically designed to address the kind of situation she had faced, where traditional military responses weren't adequate. "I'd need to select my own team," she said finally. "People I know and trust, regardless of branch of service or conventional qualifications." "Already approved," General Lawrence nodded. "You'll have complete autonomy in personnel selection, with joint service cooperation mandated from the top." "And operational parameters? Who determines when and how the task force is activated?" "That's where it gets interesting, Admiral," Jackson explained. "While the task force will operate within the Joint Special Operations Command structure, activation authority will be shared between JSOC and a special oversight committee comprised of individuals with demonstrated ethical judgment, including Ambassador Williams. The idea," the ambassador elaborated, "is to ensure that this capability is used only when absolutely necessary and only for missions that align with our nation's highest values. We're creating a failsafe, not a shortcut around proper protocols." Maya nodded slowly, the full weight of what they were proposing settling on her shoulders. They weren't just offering her a new position. They were creating an entirely new capability within the military structure, born directly from the crisis she had navigated. When would this start? She asked. Officially, the task force already exists on paper, General Lawrence replied. Your formal appointment would take effect in 30 days, giving you time to complete your current Thunderbird rotation and assist in the selection of your replacement. Maya rose and walked to the window overlooking the airfield, where her F-16 sat gleaming in the afternoon sun. The Thunderbirds had given her a second chance when her career seemed over, a way to continue flying and inspiring others. Leaving them would be difficult. But as she looked beyond the airfield to the vast Nevada desert, she thought about the Phoenix Rising maneuver she had just performed, a symbol of transformation and rebirth. Perhaps this was the next evolution in her journey, the next rising from the ashes of what had seemed like career suicide. She turned back to face the three senior officials. I accept the position, with gratitude for your trust and confidence. The relief on their faces was evident. They had clearly been concerned she might decline. Excellent, General Lawrence said, standing to offer her hand. The official announcement will be made next week after proper notifications to Congress and the service branches. Until then, this conversation remains classified. As they prepared to leave, Ambassador Williams hung back slightly, waiting until the others had exited before approaching Maya. There's one more thing, he said quietly. Something not in the official briefing. Maya raised an eyebrow questioningly. The investigation uncovered evidence suggesting that Gentech wasn't acting alone. There are indications of connections to other defense contractors, foreign intelligence services, and possibly even elements within our own government. The web is complex and far-reaching. Are you saying the conspiracy is still active? Maya asked, alarmed. I'm saying be careful, Phoenix, the ambassador replied, using her call sign deliberately. What you accomplished 6 months ago didn't just rescue me. It disrupted plans years in the making, involving billions of dollars and tremendous power. There are people who haven't forgiven that disruption. Is that why you supported the creation of this task force? To continue the investigation? Ambassador Williams smiled enigmatically. Let's just say I want to ensure that when the next crisis arises, and it will, we have the right person leading the response. Someone who understands that sometimes the rulebook has to be set aside in service of higher principles. With that, he squeezed her shoulder briefly and followed the others out, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts. Through the window, she could see the crowd still lingering at the airshow, children pointing excitedly at the aircraft on display. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, forces were still moving in the shadows, threats still developing. But now, instead of having to steal a jet to counter those threats, she would command an entire task force designed to operate in that gray area between conventional military response and the unconventional challenges of modern warfare. Maya. Robert's call sign Phoenix touched the emblem on her flight suit and smiled. The bird that rose from the ashes was stronger than before, and so was she. The journey that had begun with her desperate decision to cross the line for what she believed was right had led to the creation of something new, a capability that might prevent others from having to make the same impossible choice she had faced, and that, she decided, was worth all the risks she had taken and all the challenges that still lay ahead. The sky had never been the limit. It was just the beginning. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.